Ciao guys, we're playing Embers of Magic. Embers of Magic was made by the same people who made Sorry, I'm flipping my hair back and forth. So the Pale Spectrum is not out yet, and there's a demo out for Kickstarter. But there's hair in my mouth. Yuck. But before we start that, we're gonna start Embers of Magic because I want to do it.
I thought you said that looking down there made you sad. The melancholy of seeing the ruins of the old world or something?
Alright, Titus. Titus sat next to her, slipping his leg off the edge as well, placing his walking staff beside him.
Not today. Today it's clear and I can see the greens and yellows and oranges, and the colors of life. Not just the blues of the ocean or the white of the clouds.
Once she had looked up and marveled at their beauty, but now the condensed water vapors were little more than source of irritation. Below them was Wind Basin, the largest island in the winding archipelago. Liana glanced to her side, surveying her friend instead of the view far below.
Do you ever wish we could go back down there?
Bruh, them hips though.
Not really. Not if it's anything like how we left it.
There's no way it's still so dangerous. The magic must have begun to settle by now.
Bruh, magic, we don't fuck with magic. Magic takes a minute.
I'm sure that's what the last view to go down there said, and yet they never returned.
Have you considered that they might have simply decided to stay?
I suppose you could argue that they decided to become part of the circle of life. Getting eaten by a monster would definitely be a reason to stay.
Lana groaned at the joke, kicking her feet.
You don't know that. Why can't we just make the city, I don't know, go a bit lower? Take a quick peek.
Unlike you, the council has a strong sense of self-preservation.
You mean they're boring?
We may be boring, but at least we're alive. It's more than can be said of the billions lost down there. It's not so bad here. Even compared to the world we knew before, this place is a wonder.
And boring.
A breathtaking view, fresh food in abundance, and magic of a power beyond anything we knew before.
And in the end, it's still nothing but a prison. I miss the earth. I need to feel rough ground beneath me, rocks under my toes, and plants that weren't carefully cultivated and neat rows by a legion of professional gardeners. Not to mention animals. I miss wildlife.
I am perfectly content with not meeting the wildlife down there.
Stolas is wildlife.
And he was likely born on Terrath.
No, he wasn't.
A small chirp noise came from Liana's hair.
I doubt it. I wasn't able to find evidence of a single other owl living up here.
As though on cue, a tiny owl as seen made entirely of eyes waddled to just under her neck and nibble at her hair.
If he wasn't born here, then it means he came from somewhere else.
His parents probably live under a house you've never been to. Some owls can burrow, you know.
I suppose he could be classified in the Athene family.
She sounded unsure. He had colors on him that no owl should rightly have. Not that we're not lovely colors. Maybe the magic that had created that horrors below had also created new life. It was a fragile hope.
I've mapped every area that isn't paved. I've scaled every height and terrace, even the underside. I think that after 100 years, I would have a good sense of what kind of wildlife we had.
You know that Professor Tullith still blames you for the loss of the Eastern Tower.
Is he dead?
And I still say it wasn't my fault.
Below them, the world drifted past.
It's just not fair when there's so much beneath us that we're exiled to this tiny speck of floating rock.
Some say it's better than we deserve.
The two sat in silence for a time, Liana staring, unfocused, at the earth far below them as warm breeze tickled her face, and Solus puffed into a ball to mow to sleep. The time passed. Liana couldn't begin to say how long. She just took in the rolling world beneath.
Didn't you say you hated looking at the ruins?
She blinked. Solus perked it up.
What?
She turned to Titus, and then, following his gaze, back to where hers had only just lay. Her eyebrows furrowed as her brain struggled to absorb the retinal information it was receiving. There, far beneath her, was an enormous stone pyramid. Ruins were not uncommon sight on the clear days, where one could see the world below. After all, with a population in the billions, there were a few places that humans can live. But these ruins didn't seem right. Was it their location? Where was this exactly anyway? Then, that was when it clicked.
Those aren't ruins.
The blood rushing through her veins felt like a white water rapid in her ears.
That's a new construction, Titus.
The man grunted as Liana shiftily desperate to her feet, Solus hooting.
Titus. That's new! Those aren't ruins! It had to have been built after the rupture!
Liana, that's impossible.
But she was already tugging her huge journal, her knuckles white as she gripped the rail.
I have to see it!
Liana, how are you even going to get down there?
Without a response, beyond a rippling sound and a panic hoot from Solus, Liana was gone, bare feet slapping the cobblestone as she pounded down the street, down the stairs, and out of his sight. Titus stared after her, his mouth half open. With a small laugh, he shrugged to himself, laying one hand on Liana's boots.
Can't let her leave without these.
Anne wiped his hand on his overalls. What was this, the 5th or 6th layer of wood treatment? He doubted any ship needed that much lacquer. It was more than lacquer, too. He found the materials for the spell in one of the older books in the abandoned library. He let out a long pain sigh. Anne watched as the slacks line whipped in the wind. Once again, he released a long sigh. How long would it be before he could unfurl the sails? Anne jumped so high, he nearly cleared the railings of the ship. Fortunately, he had the finesse to make the action seem purposeful, striking the heels of his boots hard on the rail and completing the maneuver with an elaborate flourish as he turned about.
Why, hello there, missy.
Who the devil was she anyway?
Anne, I need you to let me sail with you.
Hold on.
Why, hello there, missy.
Anne, I need you to let me sail with you.
I think it's something better. For a moment, Anne only met her gaze in silence, trying to judge to see if the girl was serious. Instead of any hint of a mocking tone he found in her eyes, and her voice only urgency.
Do you know what you be asking of me, lass?
Wow, you're really serious about the whole pirate thing, aren't you?
Anne ignored the question, as Liana's eyes still met with his, with a fierceness that he had never found from the ones who came here to mock him.
Aye, but I could be asking you the same.
Below us, there's some kind of structure, but it's new. If we don't leave immediately, we'll drift too far past it to ever find it again easily.
Aye, but I could be asking.
Cool.
Below us. There's some kind of structure, but it's new. If we don't leave immediately, we'll drift too far past it to ever find it again easily. You have the only prepped airship. Nines. I bet you've got the only functional airship at this point.
Anne met her glaze, measuring the steel in her eyes.
Then we best be off quick as a gibbet. I just be needing 5 minutes and 23 seconds afore we set off.
Anne flourished into an elaborate bow before breaking off in a desperate run. Liana blinking after the man, stunned that anyone had agreed to her request, much less with so little argument. Where in the eyes was he going anyway? The pirate turned in a corner so sharp Liana thought he might topple and he was gone from sight. Taking the time to assess the ship, Liana pulled out her journal. It was a habit, if not pure instinct now, that made her begin making notations in her journal. She recorded details of the docks, the weather, and the ship. The ship was moored in a sky ship dock. Mounted 3 feet from the ground, she noted it wasn't flying yet as she counted the windows. Every once in a while, her eyes flicked downward towards the spiraling sea of clouds that now concealed the lands below. She was halfway through a quick sketch of a main mast when a thump made her spin around.
That wasn't even 4 minutes.
Titus cocked an eyebrow as she struggled to catch his breath. Her boots were by her side, and a pair of boot print marred the otherwise spotless side of the ship. Idly, she wiggled her toes, just now realizing that they were bare.
Oh, thanks.
Scooping up the boots, she walked over to him and leaned against the side of the ship as she slipped them on. Strikingly a needless epic pose, Liana adopted a freeing, serious tone.
I'll be flying soon. Lost to the long sky.
Sky God. She waited for the breezes, which plagued the ship onward to blow her hair for effect, but it only managed to whip it in her face and several strands stuck in her mouth.
Flying? On Anne's ship? The kid is a loon. He thinks he's a pirate.
He was looking at the ship critically.
Not to mention it would take more sky lilies than anyone is allowed to requisition in a year to fly this thing. It's made almost entirely out of oak.
It's the only way to get down there, sure. Are you mad or no? Narrowing his eyes and examining them more critically, Titus muttered to himself.
Bamboo probably would have been a better choice. Lighter. Maybe balsa if...
Titus,
Sorry, what?
come with me.
Liana lowered her sketchbook, standing straight and meeting the older witch's gaze. Titus' eye fell on the ship. He seemed to take it all in, and a light sparkled in his eyes. For a heartbeat, she thought he looked tempted. And then it was gone.
You know I can't.
Titus rapped the hole with his staff.
Even if Anne could get it to fly.
Liana smirked as she added a note to her sketchbook of Titus. Very serious, it read.
Ever a slave to duty.
Someone has to be. The council is content with just surviving. When the power systems failed, we lost most of the archives of magic. All we have left is books, and most people don't even know where the library is. I have a real chance to change things, Leon.
As an afterthought, she added "wears way too much orange" as a final note. A commotion in the distance prompted her to close the book.
Make sure they get some practical experience. You can't learn everything from books.
True. Liliana grinned at Titus, and they shared a smile. The commotion seemed to grow louder, and she looked behind Titus to see figures sprinting at an impossible speed, tearing through towards the ship. It was Anne, or at least she assumed it was. Beyond the distinctive boots, there were little to see beyond a cloud of uprooted sky lilies. Several heavily built witch guards were close on his tail. No, that truly didn't give Anne justice. They were certainly following at least, but the way the man moved. Leanna wondered what spell the pirate witch had used.
Halt! Stop that man!
Thief!
Thief!
Solus hooted softly, dancing in the odd way owls do.
Ooh, lassie! Skim the word for we be cutting air.
She wondered if those were actual words. Dropping her journal, which swung on a thick cord around her waist, she began untying the ship from the dock.
You can't be serious.
What's my garden for me?
Leanna was halfway done with a thick rope.
Mrs. Cooper has 3 of my books. Make sure she returns them or puts them in the library or something.
Liana, you're not going to be gone that long, surely.
She'll swear she only has 2 because the other has risque content, but it's the only known copy, so you better get it back.
Anne struck the deck with enough force to shake the ship, causing Titus to fight for balance in his wake.
Halt! Stop him!
Titus spun around, his face a contort mask of guilt and uncertainty. Anne flew below the deck with such speed Leanna wouldn't have thought him to fallen off if not for the concave of his footstep. Concede or something like that, I don't know. Leanna wasn't sure what the captain was doing, but made haste to unfurl the sails.
The blue blasters? The flowers that look like morning glories need to be sprayed with lemon water twice a day.
Anna returned as abruptly as he left, no longer holding an armload of sky lilies. His face was a manic grin. Titus stepped towards the ship, his hands outstretched towards Leanna, at a complete loss for words. He looked near tears, and Leanna's heart rich with its own guilt. I was gonna call it the ship pirate. The fuck? The pirate had one hand on the ship wheel as the ship lurched unnaturally.
Titus?
He spun the wheel hard to one side.
Sorry things didn't work out.
The air suddenly tilted to the side as though toppling over, falling off the side of the island like a rock.